Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Ibn Abi Umar podcast. This is your host, Umar Osman. Got a special episode lined up here with my good friend Waleed Jameel, who is a learning expert. And we're going to go into detail in this episode about learning, about how to make sure that learning is effective in the way that it's constructed, the way that it's delivered, and understanding how to tailor things for particular audiences. In this episode, we'll be going through how learning has changed. And in particular, there's a lot of important lessons for Muslim organizations as they're publishing more and more content online to make sure that that content is effective. And we talk about how to even determine whether things are effective and a lot of other topics. Let's dive right in. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed to the podcast. The links are in the show notes. And let's take it from there. All right, everyone. We're joined with Waleed Jameel, who's a learning expert. His full-time work is developing, delivering, and measuring learning at scale. What that means is figuring out how to take learning curriculums and optimizing them so that they can be successfully completed by thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Did I miss anything?
I think that pretty much catches it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And for those of you who are regular listeners of my podcast, all 5 of you, I think they're all related to me probably, you will recognize Waleed from the Nobody Cares About Your Halal Burger episode from his Crocs.
There you go. I was waiting for that. Thank you so much.
I had to mention that.
There you go.
Okay. So we're going to talk about online learning, Islamic learning, the way learning has changed, and just to give a brief, 50-year summary in 15 seconds type of thing. Islamic learning traditionally has been done in the same format. You go, you sit with a teacher, you study from the teacher for 5, 10, 15, 20, 40 years. And that teacher or the teachers that you study with teach you the Quran, they teach you hadith, they teach you fiqh. In your interaction with them, you also pick up on the spiritual aspects, tarbiyah, manners, how to act, how to answer questions, all those types of things. This became formalized in kind of university setting. So 4-year program, 6-year program, 10-year program, master's degrees, PhD, so on and so forth. And then in the past decade or so, we've seen learning change drastically. We've gone from for example, people in America having to go overseas and study, they're now able to study here, and there's different avenues, whether it's, the weekly class at the masjid obviously is one thing, but now we have weekend seminars, we have intensives, and we have a now proliferation of online content. So there's classes delivered via podcast, there are, series on YouTube, sometimes hundreds of hours of videos on a particular subject on YouTube. There are online courses that you can take. And so there's all different types of things. And I think every Islamic organization now is trying to leverage how they can use the online platform to enable people to learn about the religion. So what we want to go through today is talking about not only how to do that effectively, but we were talking off mic, and I think you'll agree here that there's a lot of mistakes that people are making in this regard. This is where you talk.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, it's interesting. You're talking about the 50-year summary over here. It reminds me of the apprenticeship models that blacksmiths would have, right? In order to train the next generation of blacksmiths, you would have somebody come in, be with them, and they would grow up with them. They would understand the behaviors, how the industry works, the soft skills, the hard skills of how to be a blacksmith here. But as mass scale education came about more and more, well, they started saying, hey, how can we take some of these skills and put them in a classroom and have one subject matter expert teach 50 kids at once over there?
So optimize it, make it more efficient.
Scalable, everything is such, right? Absolutely. And there is definitely value in there. But I think that one of the words you mentioned here was the tarbiyah, the character and the etiquette and the manners. You lose that in a large group setting here altogether here. You go from I have 15 apprentices with me to I have now 150 students that I'm teaching in this master's level course alone. Even at that scale, you started losing that human connection for the students to learn from you. They're learning the content, but that's different than learning it from you and how you're behaving in those, how you're living that
So
content itself.
let's dive in, because this is actually one of the bullet points that we wanted to talk about, was this idea of structured learning versus unstructured learning. And structured learning being that there's a particular curriculum. You follow the curriculum, you take a test on the curriculum, that sees how well you learn the material or retain the material or whatever the case may be, and then you move on. With the unstructured, we always hear these sayings in the Islamic tradition that, a scholar will say, I sat with such and such scholar, and for the first 20 years I learned adab, and then I began to learn knowledge. And that, someone might listen and be like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But what they're saying is that the value of the unstructured learning was for them very important, because they learned how to interact, how to conduct themselves, getting kind of that apprenticeship, so to speak.
So, when you see the phrase structured versus unstructured, and then you lean towards you mentioned the curriculum aspect, I think that if we were to ask the blacksmith, was your apprenticeship model unstructured? You'd be like, no, they went through certain curriculums with us, or rather they went through certain learning experiences. They couldn't just start forging with fire immediately. They had to understand the basics and the maintenance of the equipment and how to be respectful to your work environment and everything such there. There's a structure there. However, from a modern pedagogical perspective, it does seem unstructured because it's open-ended. There's no learning outcomes established.
Or there's another way of looking at it, maybe, is there might be a structured curriculum, but there's things outside the curriculum that are also vital for a person's development.
Yes. And I think that's where the character aspect comes in, which is extremely important right now. One of the other things that I was thinking about as we were talking about this, you talk about the future of learning specialist here. What does a learning professional of the future look like? And when we get to that topic, curator versus creator, I think that's what's going to pop up here. But back to this right now.
So the question is, as Islamic organizations are moving more toward online delivery, what that means is that people are making their videos or their pre-recorded content, putting it up online. But there's a lot of value lost in the unstructured aspects of it. So, for example, if I go and I attend, let's say, like a week-long intensive, part of the unstructured aspect is just the bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood. Just meeting other people, the other conversations, kind of I hate using the buzzwords, but the synergy and all that stuff. But there's a lot of these intangibles that are very valuable for a person's development. Can that be retained as learning shifts online?
I think that...
or is there other ways to maybe produce that same effect?
So I think that... that's an interesting question. Can it be transferred to an online medium or delivery platform where there are these unstructured learning aspects here, these synergies, these brotherhoods, this character development that happens as you watch from your own eyes how your teacher is behaving in different contexts, how your teacher is behaving as a neighbor, as a father, as someone who's exhausted, as someone who's trying to stay true to their commitment despite having a migraine, things like that, right?
Yeah.
Real lifeness of real life application of this knowledge, basically. So I think that when we look at our learners and students from 50 years ago, they are, at that time, even when you had VCRs and mass production of learning, their application of all this was still in person. Today, though, when we talk about digital learning here and character development, there is a component of us that needs to know how to behave online. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So you do need to see how your teachers are existing in that online medium as well, I think now. All right. However, that isn't a majority of your character development. It's still a very small stake because we don't have technologies like augmented reality and virtual reality that are integrated into our day-to-day existence that make it so easy for us to engage online fully or in a more deeper way yet. We're still in the early stages of that online platform.
So those aspects still can't be replicated or replaced.
But Do we need to be aware of them so that we can think about these as our learning technologies grow? I think, yeah. It's just we don't have that answer yet because that new delivery platform isn't built yet. We don't fully understand the challenge that'll bring about to our engagement as humans itself.
So the thing that I worry about, and you tell me if you've seen the same, is a lot of organizations are saying, okay, we can leverage this awesome online thing that we can deliver learning at scale
Mhm.
to thousands of people. But is there any thought being put into how to develop the informal aspects of learning?
No, there's a difference. I wouldn't even say that they're delivering learning at mass scale. They're delivering information at mass scale. Learning happens when you've taken that information, applied to a certain learning outcome, and you've demonstrated that itself. I have learned to do something. Wudu. All right, in the
Yeah,
Islamic context here. I see an information course online that talks about how to do wudu. Here are the 10 easy steps to do wudu.
right.
Great, that's information. But is it learning yet? No, learning is for you as a learner to perform. You have learned something because you've gone from confusion about a topic to clarity about a topic, and you're executing that information now. I have learned to do something. I can't claim I've taught you something, Omar, until I can see that being demonstrated. How are they seeing these skills being demonstrated? Until I see that assessment in you or that change in you, all I've done is given you information.
Mm.
Wonderful.
So it's a very important distinction.
It's hugely important. I mean, Wikipedia is not a learning site; it's an information site because it's not out there to change you. That's not their mission. Their mission is to provide that information to everybody, right? How is that different than a online education portal of any sort? Blacksmithing 101, welding, or Islamic education. It's
Right.
not it's an Islamic information site that you're subscribing to. Linda, it's an information site. What you do with it, that's when the learning transforms here, right?
It's like a cooking channel. You can
Cook.
watch a bunch of people cook, but it doesn't mean you know how.
You-
I'm a really good example of that.
yes, you are, but we're very proud of you. So I think that the other aspect here is that when the learning academies that I've developed successfully in my life, my ex boss, phenomenal guy, bit insane, but phenomenal insane. He insisted that we have all of our courses facilitated, all of our digital courses facilitated. And what that meant was that we would onboard people from 70 plus countries every month into our company, and they would all have a facilitator guiding them. One, two, they were put into small communities. We had 24 students in a digital classroom at a given time. Mind you, we didn't have virtual reality, we didn't have augmented reality, and this is about 8, 9 years ago, 2007.
So probably not even very stable video conferencing.
No, we didn't have video conferencing at all.
Okay.
Because when we were talking about students sitting in, say, Kenya and South Africa and Australia, you can expect there to be similar bandwidth accessibility to their digital content or learning platform. All we had was asynchronous learning experiences. So they would come online, they would chat in a discussion forum and go away. But
Can you explain what asynchronous learning is
Oh,
real quick? Because
absolutely.
a lot of people probably aren't familiar with that term.
Yeah, good point. Synchronous learning means that it's in real lifetime.
Like a class,
Like a
physically
class,
in a class.
exactly.
Everyone's
Or-
doing the same thing at the same time.
This conversation between you and me is synchronous. If it was asynchronous, it would be you've said something, sent me that audio file as a question, I responded to it in an audio format, sent it back to you, and then you're piecing it all together. So it's like a slow discussion forum is an example
So
of
text message.
text message. Yes, versus live chat.
Got
Live
it.
chat
Okay.
is you can see somebody respond to you.
Okay.
Text message, it'll come back to you.
All right. So the asynchronous learning.
So we would have asynchronous learning. But the difference was that there was a facilitator who was paid to come in daily and follow up on every single person. I know this because I have reports on every single person on a weekly basis for 8 years there on how they were engaging, how they were performing. Was there any gaps in their their interaction online? That transformed that information of a course to a learning course for, in my opinion, because we were able to A, assess them, and B, there was a community that we created for every one of these people every month for years.
So you have a community and you have learning outcomes.
Yeah.
So what would learning outcomes look like?
I think there's a For our listeners here, if they were to Google up a phrase called Bloom's taxonomy, Bloom apostrophe no apostrophe Blooms taxonomy, it breaks down the different levels of acquiring information and converting it from data to an actual piece of knowledge that you can do something with here. First is just reading something, then it's understanding it, then it's synthesizing it, then it's so on and so forth. There's like 6 different levels in there. Um, we would design our learning to follow that as much as possible. So in first we would give them some information, ask them to do something with that information, and so on and so forth. For us, though, more importantly, it was the storytelling aspect that came to be very, very powerful. All this information is great, but how can you apply it in your life? That relevancy was supremely significant.
So this is something where, in the context of Islamic organizations,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously there's a huge trend to leverage putting the information online. So there's tons and tons of classes online. There's information delivery.
Mm-hmm.
What would your advice be for how to attach learning outcomes to that, as opposed to just saying like, okay, hey, we've got this library. Here's this. Here's a tafsir of the whole Quran, for example, right? Or here's 10 chapters of fiqh, all explained. Salah, wudu, zakat, fasting, financial transactions, whatever. Here's this library of information of a teacher teaching these things, and that's all accessible. I can sit and I can download, I can consume these videos, I can consume the audio, I can read the material. But in terms of the organizations creating the content or publishing the content, how can they use this idea of communities and learning outcomes to make that learning more effective?
So, I think that I would imagine as a design thinking project right now, if you were to doodle up and just say, hey, let's just creatively come up with some ideas here. There is an opportunity for mass scale information. That does need to happen. There needs to be some place where people can go up there and just in a open-ended, open area place, search for whatever topics they want to. All right, almost like a YouTube of content, and you can say, "Hey, I'm looking up how to do wudu while traveling in an airplane wearing airplane socks. Which do these qualify as for doing
wiping or
wiping? Yeah, great. So they can search that up there and they can find some answers.
Or how to determine prayer time as well on an international flight.
Exactly. Okay. So there is room opportunity for all that there as well. If the learning outcome is to create thoughtful not leaders or thoughtful Muslims at these different levels in the society, right? Be it the youth leader at the Islamic Center, be it the president of your local Islamic charity, or household leaders themselves as well, right? I think that's where the community aspect comes online very powerfully. How can you create small pockets of communities? It doesn't have to be localized communities. It can be a digital community. That's not impossible here. But then you need to supplement them with other energies. So let's say that you say, we want to create let's say, support forum for new fathers so they can understand how to be intelligent Muslim fathers with their first children here. All right? How do you create learning around that? Well, there's a whole bunch of information already available. Here are the rights of the kids. Here are the rights of the families. Here's how you take care of your wife. Here's how you the psychology behind things nowadays. Here's the 5 love languages, blah, blah, etc. There's a lot of information available already. To apply that, you have a community that says, hey, you're going to be a father in 3 months from now. We're kicking off 25 people online, led by such and such person who's been a father for the past, let's say, 10 years, and he can guide you through whatever questions you may have. He becomes a facilitator in that conversation. I think that can then be done through, if it's local, great, do local meetups. If it's not local, then yeah, you can do video conferencing as well, because these are support sessions for people to come and connect together, answer the question, and disconnect, right. And engage in either digital communities, WhatsApp groups, and other areas, whatever is there. So there is that opportunity there. What I'm getting to here is, it's on the tip of my tongue. The person leading this though, they have to be a guide on the side versus being a sage on the stage. And I think
Mm,
that's what I want to shift away from here more and more. You go to your undergrad level course at college with 2,000 students, and there's a professor standing up there, and he's a sage on the stage, and he knows everything, and he's going to communicate everything to you, and you learn from him. And it is very largely comes across as one way communication.
right.
It's data being passed from professor to student, not even necessarily information, not learning because you go home and you try to figure things out on your own, versus hi, I'm Omar. I have gone through this process and I can be your guide on the side. Here's the wealth of information available outside. That's all great. We're going to talk about the different contexts of how to apply this information here. So, in today's session, we're just going to talk about hey, you've had a baby, it's been a week. What are you doing? What are you going through? How does this impact your work? Let's just talk about these stories and then we'll sprinkle it with Islamic wisdoms on how to apply all this. And if you need more information on these things here, click here and it'll take you to 15 more videos about ghusl for the child or
Cutting the hair, how to cut the hair for the newborn.
or akika basics. Great. All those topics are there. But you be the guide on the side. I think that's where I see a lot of corporate learning as well shifting to as well right now. And I'm working on establishing guides there versus sages on the stages.
So actually, I think this answers one of the big questions we wanted to talk about, which was the future of Islamic online learning or how to reform online Islamic learning. And I think what I'm hearing is we have tons of experts already, and we have an abundance of excellent information available.
Yeah.
But what we're missing is, what you said, curator versus creator.
Yeah.
Is we need people who can help to filter the content relevant to the intended audience.
Exactly. I think that's severely absent here.
Because right now we're just dumping information accessible to everyone. Because in the Muslim mind, it's I get more reward if I reach 100,000 people with this class.
Absolutely. Please forward my email, and then everyone gets Sadqa Jariyah, and we're all good people.
Yeah.
I just hate those emails. In sales, what you talk about, let me just give out all this information to everybody. It'll be great. In my previous job, we used a phrase for our sales team, and we told them not to do this, which was show up and throw up. Like, show up to a customer site and be like, blah, here's the 17 options we have for you, and which one would you like? And the customer's like, I guess I'll take option number 3. But that's not really being intelligent about your customer engagement.
So this is really interesting. In Khatib workshop, Sheikh Abdul Nasser, he always explains, we go through Surah Al-Jumu'ah, and there's an ayah there that it's addressed to the rabbis, that they would come and they would leave the people like donkeys carrying books. And often we hear the ayah and we think donkey carrying books is like us, that we have an abundance of information and we don't act on it, so we're dumb. But the address was actually to the teachers. Because what they were doing was they were dumping information on people in a way that they couldn't handle it, and they turned the audience into donkeys carrying books. And so the reprimand was actually that you're not teaching them in the appropriate manner, you're just dropping the info and running off.
That's pretty much what it is. Feels like right now.
And so we have a lot of information overwhelm.
And that's all. By the way, it's not that is new now. If you go back, and if I was to ask my dad, Abu, how did you not have enough information? Is that the case? Because clearly we have too much. No, he had a ton of information back in his day as well. He had encyclopedias, he had books, he had articles, he had very, very experienced people around him. He also suffered from information overload in his context.
Yeah.
We are still suffering from the same. But in our context, it doesn't matter if you have 100 times more information or 1,000,000 times. At a certain point, it's just too much. So
from the perspective of an organization, then they should be splitting or identifying, and we use this term at work, but the user stories.
Yes.
Who is the audience and what do they need? And
Right.
It's going to be different. So one person might be traveling on a flight and they just need to know, how do I figure out the prayer time on a plane? And they just need to be given the answer and move on. Someone else needs to know, how to derive that ruling.
Yes.
Someone else needs to know what are the 12 different opinions about this ruling and why, whatever the case may be. But I think the part that's missing is we're not separating out the audiences.
Can I switch to a corporate analogy over here?
Sure.
At work, we have which SQL server should we be using? Should we be using Amazon Web Services? Should we be using Microsoft Azure? Whatever. Which platform should we be developing our own? Which language should we use to develop it on? What GitHub should we be using? What developers should we be hiring? Which location, etc., etc. But to the end user, none of that matters. The end user just wants to do
it. Just needs to work.
They just need to work.
I need to be able to save my file without any problem.
And can I please just share my file and just move things around from left to right here? Can I get information when I need it in the context I need it versus you must come to my website and learn things my way? I see that the Islamic education framework is going through natural growing pains right now. It'll get there, but I think that the corporate learning area, because it is at the end of the day very financially driven, if you don't learn fast enough, or if you're not able to adapt your learning styles to empower your employees fast enough, you will lose out on money-making opportunities. I think there's a lot we can learn from there. Take their lessons and their wisdoms and whatever they come up with and take into ours.
So it's funny. I see people trying to do this, but it's what it turns into is Islamic organization X launches some online thing and suddenly, so many thousand people are downloading it or watching it or whatever the case may be. So everyone else says, oh, we need to do the same thing.
Clearly it's working.
So, yes, clearly it's working. So let's copy it. Let's make our own thing. So we make our library, we put up our courses, and we try to get our thousands of people. I guess the question that I have is, how do people determine whether they're adding value, whether they're learning, the measurement aspect? How can they tell, is our learning actually successful? Because I think the trap, and I don't want to go on too much of a rant or a tangent, most people's metric for success is the revenue that comes in. That the online learning is an easy revenue generator. So let's throw up our stuff online, get people to pay, and this many people are signed up, this many people are paying, so it's successful.
So, I don't think that I think the revenue focus should be there.
Okay.
But how much you focus on and which aspect of the revenue focus on, that's important.
So it's where it's prioritized in the conversation.
Yes. Now, as an example here, learning and development entities within the corporate context are often looked at as support functions. And what that means is that they're not held financially accountable for how much money they spend. When you're not held accountable for how much money you're spending, you're a little bit looser.
You can be responsible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My past lives, I've always been in L&D functions where we had to justify all of our expenses. It focused us to be frugal, sometimes over frugal, but sometimes rightfully frugal on the places where we could make the most impact. If you only have $1,000, where are you going to spend it, right? Versus, you got money in the bank, just keep buying everything left and right, and then nothing works. Nothing will work elegantly. Everything is sort of making progress.
A very expensive hodgepodge.
Yeah. Now, I think that having a budget, having a financial focus in online Islamic academies is useful, as long as it fits into your strategy narrative here, which I don't know, different places, different things here. Now, if your strategic narrative is that we want to simply be the Netflix of Islamic education on topic ABC, great. You do that, and you've done that. You've made all the videos about it. You are the library for everything related to Sahabas. Okay. All right. Not the Sirah, but you are like the Sahaba
resource.
Exactly. Yeah. That's you guys here. Wonderful. You've achieved that outcome over there. But if your goal is to create, once again, thoughtful learners who will question, who will grow, who will keep seeking more knowledge even after your program has finished, after your learning library has made its impact on them, that's a very different learning outcome, you see. When we talk about learning metrics over here, Isa, how do you figure out report some of these? depends, goes back to what is it that you're trying to measure. And that is, even the Islamic organizations I've worked with, it's it's a mixed bag. So, um, one of the places I worked in, for example, all their measurements were very revenue driven. How can we make sure more and more people log into us so that we keep retaining them as customers and we can keep making more money? Great. As long as you're frank about this thing, let your customers know that's my goal. Because
Yeah.
it's totally cool to make money as long as it supports that. But just be frank about it versus,
That you're doing this as a revenue generator, not
yeah,
to teach you anything.
well, my primary focus is to make money. And if in the process you learn something, good for you, buddy. But I've made money. Okay, then knock yourself out.
So if someone was, how would they measure learning then? Like, what would be the way to say, like, okay, we created this online course, or I created
Let,
this. Let's
let,
use this example. I created this 10 video course on the life of Abu Bakr.
okay.
Okay, how and 500 people sign up.
Mm-hmm.
My revenue target is met. Okay, but how do I go this step further and figure out
Your value.
the value that I added? Did I just produce 10 more videos to the million that already exist, and so now it's 1,000,010? Is that the value that I added, or is there a way for me to determine my 10 videos led to blank outcome in the people that listen to it, or this type of change, or this type of development?
So that's an interesting question. And even in the learning circles that I'm part of, similar questions regarding corporate learning have not been answered.
Right, because every soft skill falls into the same category.
It's how do you measure the value of this learning in an employee's life? I taught them how to
We
use
put them
Excel.
in a leadership class. What happened?
I taught them Excel. Are they using more Microsoft Excel now? Even that is a hard thing to
Yeah,
measure
did
here.
their pivot table quality increase by 10%?
Ooh la la! Oh my God, that would be really cool if we could figure out how to do that. We could make millions of just pivot tables alone.
I don't know how to make a pivot
I
table.
know, I know. Nobody does. Nobody does. But seriously, listen. Side note: we should
A revenue generator idea?
right. Just pivot tables 101. That's it. So in the corporate learning, there's a very the chief learning officer is a very famous, popular learning magazine out there. We went to conferences for that. Me and my boss did back in the day, 10 years ago, and to figure out how do you measure learning, how was corporates measure learning, and he came back with a two-worded answer. He said, "Waleed, it depends. It depends on what you're trying to measure." So we shifted from a return on investment to a return of expectation in our learning strategy, which was, what are we expecting this learning to do? Can we get a sense of some metrics around that? As an example, if we teach people the history of the company, does that hopefully influence their behaviors in how they deal with our new customers? We don't know that. We just have some senses around that. It's almost like guiding by the stars at night. That's the
Mm.
best. Now let's go back to your example of Abu Bakr. Um, Knowledge, skills, abilities. Those are the three large camps that information kind of falls into. Are you giving them knowledge? Are you teaching them a skill? Are you giving them what ability are they able to perform as well? With Abu Bakr, a lot of it is knowledge based, how he
Right.
behave, etc., etc. But there are some skills in there as well, obviously. Skills of patience, skills of communication, skills of ibadah, skills of so on, so on, so on, so on. Um, One example for you could be, well, after this, how has this, and it's very qualitative.
Yeah.
Stories from the end users themselves. Can you tell me when you consciously thought of applying these in your life there?
So a lot of it, tactically, a lot of it boils down to taking surveys and soliciting feedback.
Right, I don't like the word surveys because it's just so overused
Yeah.
nowadays. It's exhausting. You get a survey, you're like, I don't want to do this in here.
Right.
But as learners, you and I know those things are insanely valuable. I make a point whenever I deal with any business. I say, can I send an email back to your manager about good performance? I did that with my home insurance the other week. The guys were seriously happy with it. Like, thank you so much. Nobody tells us this stuff. I'm like, yeah, because there's survey fatigue out there.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of being in a small community where you're the guide of 25 people. There's a quality of relationship you have with your communities that when you put up your hand and say, hey, did this lesson make sense to you guys? Did you find it valuable? How did you find it valuable?
Mm.
Because you're in a small community, there's a significantly higher return on communication as well. That somebody
So
comes
it's
back and
really
say, "Hey,
sometimes it's almost as simple as just being focused on getting the feedback.
it is," but 500 students versus 25 students, you can't reach out to 500 people.
Yeah.
It's just not humanly possible to be personable at that large volume in a short amount of time. If you had a year, that would be different. But you need your
Right.
feedback results in 1 week. Now, getting that feedback from that point there, that's where the stories come from. Um, as an example, there are some surrounding metrics you can think about that are a little different than your standard stuff. If you look at the movie theater experience, Omar, uh, one way we see how successful a movie is how much money did it make, right? How well did Finding Nemo do? Well, ticket sales, great. But could we have other metrics around that? As an example, how long did people stay outside the movie theater after the movie? How early did people show up? How happy were they? What kind of noise levels existed outside the movie theater once the movie was finished? How many popcorn refills did they ask for during the movies itself here?
Right.
You see, there's these other guiding metrics around it that kind of tell you how well.
Someone has to pay attention to.
Yeah, and something to think about. Now, take the Abu Bakr example here. What kind of, secondary or tertiary metrics could we think about here?
Right. Like there's the technical ones, like what was the video watch time?
Exactly.
Did people watch it all the way through? How many times did they watch the video?
Were there repeat visits to that information, etc., etc. But imagine that, hypothetically speaking, that this group of 25 people that you're reaching out to are all heavy Facebook users or all heavy social media users of some platform. Could you keep a tab on what kind of
what are they sharing?
Exactly. What about the frequency of posting? If we're talking about being mindfulness of your time, and being more conscious of your ibadah itself here, did their posts start dropping during salah times all of a sudden? What about during work times here? Could we keep a track of their phone app and say, are you logging into that as much to your Twitter app as you were previously? I'll be curious to see what are these other metrics that we could get that are guiding by the stars kind of metrics, right?
Yeah.
To give us an indicator of their successes here, of the impact of this learning to them. What if we expanded the circle and said, hey, father support of Abu Bakr as he was a new father or a new leader? Hey, can we keep a track of your spouse, your young kids? What are they doing at home? How's the happiness level at home? Are you buying more ice cream, less ice cream?
Yeah.
What's going on over there, right? If you're talking about budgetary concerns, right? Cost and budget, how's your spending habits going down? Can we link to your Mint account? There's all these other things that, at least if we sit down and think about, we could come up with some things here.
There's creative solutions there, but I think the problem that we're running into is it's not even on anyone's radar yet.
I don't think so, because I also say this, it's not just the Islamic education arena, but it's just learning in general that is not thinking about these things here.
Everyone's still focused on content creation and information delivery, basically.
Yes. Whereas the last thing here, if you say, did this make a difference? Well, maybe you're asking the wrong questions here. What are better learning questions? Did colleges, let's just say colleges as an example, in the recent past few years or decade or so, we see that there's serious questions about, has this college degree gotten you a job?
Yeah, like what's the ROI on that degree?
Exactly. There's a program by this guy called Adam something, not Adam Tawfiq, but Adam something.
Shout out.
There you go. Based on the Bay Area, where he came up with a new hire with a program to help people get jobs in corporate worlds, and it's a 12-month program. And in that program, he says the first 6 months he's focusing on you can be a high school graduate or a college graduate entering this 12-month program. He only has 25 seats per program. So once again, A, community. 2, it's all local right now. Once again, community. 3, the skills that he's focusing on, the first 6 months is education about what topics. He's not talking about communication 101 or physics or geometry, whatever they teach you at the freshman, sophomore year in colleges. Instead, it's focused on project management, Scrum, Agile, other things like that. What makes a new hire good? That's what he was focusing on. How do I help somebody get a job immediately, ASAP?
So this is helping them to cultivate the skills that will be most applicable when they start a new job.
Exactly. Yes, and then the next 6 months, they go to intern at what's that? Warby Parker and companies like that. Lyft. They're partnered with all those companies in the Bay Area right now. Now, what is the cost of this? Zero. There's zero cost to the entire program for the first 3 years. For the first the 12-month cost. Then he says we're going to let you work for 3 years, and after 3 years, for the next 3 years, we request that you donate 10% of your income back to us. You're not in debt. They're saying that their program is going to be so valuable and
That
impactful.
You won't even question it.
It'll pay for itself. Versus other learnings that say, "Come, we'll teach you Python programming. Will this help me get a job? We don't know.
It's a bullet point on your resume.
Yeah, come become a PMP because that's going to help you get a better job, right?
It's a bullet point on the resume.
Wonderful. Whereas
actually, PMP's initials after your name on the resume.
There you go. It's even better.
It's even better.
One step up. But this program is actually saying that, listen, if we are saying that we are actually delivering the value we're delivering in our learning program, it will show results. And the result is you'll have a job.
Because you'll have the skills that you need that other people aren't getting.
I found it to be a fascinating program there. And there are similar programs like that coming to Dallas in smaller capacities. But I need to look that program up again to see how I can...
So I think it's really interesting. So in an Islamic context, if we applied that same analogy, it would be, you're not... Obviously, the knowledge aspect is the fiqh and the aqeedah and the hadith and the tafsir. But then the skills aspect would be how to lead a community, how to develop a community, how to grow a community.
And by the way, when we say community, we don't just mean... I wouldn't just limit to Muslim community, but how are you a valuable member of
where you live,
the city you live in, the neighborhood you live in, because we're not Muslims only in our masjids. I hope not, but we're...
I don't know.
I see the look. You guys should see the look on my face right now. But yeah, we're Muslims everywhere you go, right? How do you be that? Wouldn't that be amazing if you could figure out a program with metrics like that?
Yeah.
An Islamic Sunday school that said that there's zero fees to it because we're so confident of the way we teach it, that 3 years from now, you will be happy to give 10% of your income, of your kids' income back to us.
That'll never happen.
True. But there's always loopholes they see.
But it's a creative solution.
Yeah, and so this guy figured it out, and he's saying that there you go. It's so good that you'll want to do it, and it's taken off since last year, and so far it's doing well.
So I'm going to switch gears real quick because there's one topic that we wanted to touch on that we haven't had a chance to yet. Mm-hmm. And that was, and this will actually go to that information delivery aspect.
Okay.
So one thing that's happened is, and before I get to my question, I'll kind of give my rant on it. So which is how to deliver content. And there's like the stereotypical thing of, oh, nobody watches long videos, so we have to make short videos. No one reads books, we have to make short blog posts. And so everyone kind of internalizes these talking points, and then they develop their content around it. Oh, people don't read books anymore, so we have to have these short things. People don't watch long stuff anymore, so we have to have this short thing. And this is how they say this is how we have to deliver content. Mm-hmm. And my hot take, my rant, is that this is actually, even in an age of information abundance, is starting to devalue the information. Because I think that people do read books if they are good and relevant. I think that people do watch long videos, even educational ones, as long as they're well done. And I think one thing that I see happening is people are hiding behind these talking points to produce mediocre content. And I wanted to get your take on that. Or do you have an opposing hot take? We can argue about it. Or if...
So I think that... so what you're saying here is that these people are making strong because people have the intentions.
Because these are the talking points in the online learning space, right? That, oh, people don't watch long videos, so make short ones.
So I think that that's... sorry, my first reaction to that is, again, I would agree with you that there is a logical fallacy there that people don't watch long videos, therefore we must make short videos. Versus, our content sucks for 50 minutes, so therefore let's make our content suck for 15 minutes only.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, your content itself is poorly done. You're not thinking about how to.
The issue is not the length.
Yeah. Now it's like, no, exactly. So people are happy to sit through.
Integral.
Yeah, there you go. All right. For hours and hours and hours at a time. There's a reason why Netflix binging is such a cool thing. People enjoy it, so they're happy to do so. There's another concept that a word that I picked up about a few months ago that I really like, binge learning. Omar wants to learn how to make better briskets. He wants to learn how to smoke briskets. Within one weekend, you'll end up researching the hardware, the software, because there is software now in briskets as well.
Okay.
The user interfaces in your apps, what kind of charcoal to use, professional charcoal, this charcoal, that charcoal, all this thing. He'll binge like crazy. He'll sit down and happily watch a 2-hour video of a guy talking about just simply cutting a brisket and what type of knives to use, because the content is valuable to him and because the content is not wasting his time.
Okay.
So it's not a matter of the video on Abu Bakr was way too long, so we got to make it smaller. But rather, it was presented, in my opinion, poorly. So it was
that my storytelling skills were horrible.
Right. Oh, you know what it reminds me of? Teaching people how to be better presenters, and the first assumption that they have. By the way, I've done these workshops where people walked in thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be taught to use PowerPoint better." No. The issue was not PowerPoint. The issue was you didn't know how to tell a good story. And so we actually put them on the spot with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming based content. And those who went into these classes with a intention to learn and improve gave us rave reviews. And those who felt offended that their core of being was insulted.
That they're being told that they're not a good presenter.
Exactly.
Even though they think they're a good presenter.
Oh, obviously, I'm great at this thing. How else did I become a senior leader in my company? Obviously, I must be good at what I do.
Why do I keep giving khutbah every week if I'm not good at it?
Exactly. Clearly, the evidence is there. And I give good khutbahs because I'm there every week. And I'm there every week because I give good khutbahs.
And the same 3 people tell me every week that I'm good.
Yeah. So I think the same thing adheres with the Islamic content, whereas the packaging is poor. There's not... When we talk about user case stories, right? We're leaving out the audience completely here. It's literally the case of, let me design this this software or this house without the resident in mind. And how many times have we walked into a house and said, this house makes no sense. Why is the bedroom over there? Why is there a door here? Why is the hallway so long and narrow? It's like,
oh yeah, we saw a house like that a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
That there was a triangle shaped secondary study that looked like it was just there because there was extra room.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was like a game room with a kitchen, and then you had to go through the game room to another bedroom. Like it was a very, there's like
a house made out of leftovers.
Yeah.
That's how you feel.
It wasn't a house for like people to live in.
No. And so this isn't a course that's made for people to learn from. It's a course because the person who's teaching it believes that this is my knowledge and this is how it should be transmitted. And good for you, buddy. You're the subject matter expert. You have had success in your life here, but that doesn't make you a successful delivery or an orator or a teacher. It reminds me of those, I've had friends of mine, doctors, who would think that just because they're so specialized in this one particular industry and they're so smart, therefore they know how to pick the best car, how to pick the best real estate deal.
The expertise transfers.
So there you go. And it doesn't. It actually fails phenomenally. And that's why in colleges, how many colleges...
Oh, you mean like how to run a masjid?
What?
No, that's a different podcast.
Yeah. I hope I got my shock face across successfully here. But I still remember in college, I had this one undergrad class where the professor was this MIT genius graduate of my college. And first week, 150 kids in the class. Second week, maybe down to like 20, 30 people. Where's everybody else? In the Indian teacher TA's office, during office hours, crammed into this tiny space as he was explaining to everybody. And I still remember standing there as he was leaning up against the whiteboard, squashed, saying, okay, as we can all see, here's how the variables are working. We're like, oh, thank you so much. Expertise doesn't transfer over. I think that the video length itself of making them shorter there is an opportunity for that. Let's not discard that, but let's not mix up two different
Yeah.
solutions here. The solution of shorter, snappier content is one thing. The solution that says that you need to have better designed, intelligent thinking in your content is a separate thing altogether.
For length, I heard the video should be as long as they need to be and as short as possible.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So when someone will put an artificial limit that all our videos must be
3 minutes. Yeah.
Wonderful. But what if the topic only requires 60 seconds? Are you going to fill up the rest of the fluff with what?
I was going to say, like, if it's a garbage video, or not garbage, I shouldn't be too negative, but if it's not a good video, even if it's 3 minutes, I'll stop watching after 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But if it's a good video, I'll watch 30 minutes.
If it's not relevant to you, then why do you care?
Yeah.
Would you, as a...
I mean, when I was researching, I wanted to buy a camera. I've never bought a DSLR before in my life. So I wanted to buy a camera, and I would sit and I would watch videos that were 30 minutes long, that were going through, these are the features, this is how you use it, this is what it does, this is what it doesn't do. And then I would watch enough, like, because they were relevant and the information was useful and I could do something with it, I would watch 30 minutes. But a video that started out and I could just tell this isn't going to give me what I want, I would turn it off after 5 seconds.
Exactly. And so that's what we do in our personal life. I think that my example, I did all my own paperwork for buying my house here. All right, I was my own real estate guy. Went through all the documentation. I sat and watched a 2-hour video talking about the real estate paperwork here for Dallas by myself with headphones, and I just went through 2 hours of what other people would consider boring, mind-numbing video, but to me it was insanely useful.
It's what you needed.
It's what I needed, and I went through it line by line at 1.5x speed, and it was extremely educational for me. All right, one of the longest YouTube videos I think I've seen. 2 hours of just this guy talking about filling in a form, and there was no picture of the guy. It was just his voice and literally the form and his mouse moving over every single line in those 7 or 8 pages of real estate paperwork.
And it wasn't he was just talking about paper. There's a clear outcome. This is how you fill it out.
Yes. So when you talk about learning objective, his learning objective there was to inform you of how that form worked, what are the different variables and what it meant, etc., in there. Here, he wasn't assessing you in the sense that at the end of this video,
you're gonna give a quiz.
Yeah, well, you can, but that's not what his goal was. His goal was to inform, and that was his learning objective. It was met. He wasn't trying to give me new skills or new abilities. He was trying to give me new knowledge, and that was great. Now,
this kind of actually reminded me, studying to pass a test or studying to learn.
It happens all the time. People do this at work, right? There's a compliance course. Click, next. I'm done it. Your office says you must do 40 hours of training a year. You know when all these people come and do training?
40 hours before it's due.
For December. It's just jam-packed. Everything takes a hit. All right? It's when do people file their taxes? Not
April 14th.
There you go. April 13th. Your accountant is like, please don't touch me. I need to get back to my accountant too.
Yeah.
So, so I think that there is... what are we talking about?
I don't know, learning.
Yeah, no, we're talking about learning. Yeah, but there was so many little threads here. It's fascinating here. I think that the mindfulness aspect of going in there with the intention to learn, I think that is very absent right now, and it changes the game very, very significantly. The other thing I want to talk about here was something about your last best consumer experience. As an example here. You go to Whole Foods. Yeah, Whole Foods is a wonderful example. It's commonly available, I think, here in the US. You are walking to Whole Foods and you stop a guy and say, hey, where can I find good chips to go with my salsa? And they say, oh, I can answer that for you. And then he'll take you to the chips aisle and say, are you looking at whole grain? Are you looking at salty? Are you looking at lemon lime flavor? What? What are the different brands? Are you looking at organic, non-organic? Are you looking at allergies? What? Go through the whole 15 yards with you. You're like, wow, that was great. Price of chips, say maybe 10% more than other stores, but great. You then 2 weeks later walk into your local grocery store there and you say, hey, I'm looking for some chips. And the person will say, aisle 7, I think.
Yeah.
And you're like,
as you find a person.
Well, yeah. So first find a person who's willing to talk to you. Okay, because they're power walking everywhere else that they can, rightfully so. Um, and aisle 7. You're disappointed at this thing, even though your local grocery store didn't change its delivery model in the past 2 weeks, but rather your expectations have now increased based on your last best consumer experience.
Mm.
When we come to Islamic education, like it or not, that educational experience is being compared to your last best consumer or last best learner experience. That could have been at your Home Depot Saturday morning classes. It could
Right.
have been in your buddy's halakha night 5 weeks ago, where the teacher was there with you. It could have been at a weekend seminary class here by a well-established seminary. Whatever it is, your last best consumer experience becomes your new norm.
So expectations are raised.
Expectations are raised and changed all the
Changing.
time.
Yeah.
So, are our Islamic education frameworks,
Keeping pace.
are they? Well, no. No. Are our Islamic centers keeping pace with what is the definition of an Islamic center? Separate podcast, I know.
Yeah.
But the expectations have changed.
So the issue really, if we get down to it, is not a lack of information or even inability to deliver the information or create, the informational content. It's really what it comes down to is understanding the audience,
There you go.
understanding what they need and
Yeah.
how they're consuming and what their goals are.
Yes.
And if we can kind of round it up, if those aspects are missing from the discussion, you're set up to fail.
Very much so.
Even if your revenue is good.
You'll make money in the short run. Good for you, buddy. But if your intention is to change the, set up something for your akhirah, something for sadqa jariyah, I don't know.
Or to have some type of transformational impact in the learner.
Yeah, how's
Yeah.
that coming along there? When you're not thinking about the learner at all. This is not to say that every whimsical desire that the learner comes up with, you must
Yeah, I was gonna say this is where the pushback will always be, well, people don't know what they need to know.
Fair point. Very fair point. All right. Somebody wants you to spoon feed their kids on Sunday schools. Yeah, that's not realistic. But you can't just on one crazy request dismiss the whole backlog of suggestions and ideas. That's not how improving works.
So how does an organization strike the balance? I mean, this is probably our last question because we're running short on time here. What drives the content? Does an organization say, here are the things people need to know, and so we're going to teach them, versus this is what people are demanding? Kind of like that capitalist mindset, so to speak. We're like, well, people want a class on XYZ topic, so we're going to produce it because that's what people want, that's what people pay for, that's what people take.
So I think that what you said right now, that here's what we need to teach. What we need to teach about Islam, we have a massive legacy of precedents. That this is what people need to know about tarbiyah, about etiquette, about manners, about knowledge, how you consume, what are the different topics that they need to consume. That's always been there. It's not as if that's going to take 100%, 360-degree change in the next 1 year. It's largely going to stay as is, largely. I think that if you take a look at any business, every quarter, every 6 months, what does it do? It reevaluates its strategy. It makes sure that it's catering to this market.
Right.
I would start off with are our Islamic educational institutions keeping up with their audiences every 6 months and saying, hey, is this use case still relevant? How relevant is it? Do we need to create new use cases instead then? Technology has changed. Delivery has changed. Look, what happens to Microsoft HoloLens was 2 was announced last week, I think. I'm going to be looking at that again. What happens if next year some augmented or virtual reality company says, hey, you know what? We figured this out. It's $10. That's it.
Yeah.
Crazy thing here. Releases the thing here.
It's going to reinvent all the learning again.
How long will it take for our Islamic organizations, any learning or Islamic organization, to say, hey, we need to rethink our use case, versus reacting to the buzzwords in the market?
Yeah, there you go.
So that's what I would say is that do we have updated use cases?
Are we paying attention to it?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, Waleed, Jazakallah khair. Any closing comments? Anything you want to share with all 5 of our listeners?
All 5 of our listeners? Yeah, I'm not going to wear Crocs out anymore, so thank you for that, Amar.
Okay. Learning outcome was achieved for this podcast. All right. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you enjoyed it, please share with a friend. If you know any organizations or people who could benefit from the episode, please send it their way. And once again, check the show notes. Make sure you're subscribed. Leave, rate, review, all that good stuff. If you've got any feedback, send me a message on Instagram or Twitter at Ibn Abi Umar. And as always, please make sure you are signed up for my email list at ibnabiumar.com, where I send out blog updates and all that good stuff. And also got a new video up on my YouTube channel finally last week. So please check that out. Jazakallah khair. See you on the next episode.